Hi, everyone. So this is our first episode. Welcome to What's the Plan? The podcast where we dive into the matters of our careers in the architecture and urban planning field. I'm Haley.
And I'm Andrea. So, Haley, what's the plan this week?
This week's plan is all about who we are. So we're gonna let you guys know what we're all about.
And get to know us. Yeah. Okay, so first off the bat, who are we? We're both two female identifying people. We're of Chinese descent, and we are based in the Toronto area.
I like that.
And nothing, we are both recent graduates. Graduates of 2020, aka COVID graduation. Which kind of sets up a lot of things for, I guess, why we're doing this podcast, what we plan to do in the future, and all that kind of stuff. So, how did we meet?
How did we meet, Andrea?
Okay, so we briefly touched upon this, like, when we were trying to plan out questions for today's podcast to get to know us. And we kind of established that we officially met in grade 7.
Yes.
Officially, but we don't really have any memories.
Yeah.
Or, like, we don't really remember how our friendship kind of started. Everything was kind of a blur.
Yeah.
But some things you mentioned was that in grade 8, we did a presentation together.
Yes.
And I was like, I don't remember what this project was for. So I took a deep dive.
Oh, okay, you did.
Yeah, I did. I took a deep dive into my archives of, like...
Of life,
like, documents and pictures that I have from, like, grade 7 and 8. So I actually found out that our first official photo, just the two of us, together, was in grade 7.
Whoa! Where was this?
Okay, you don't have any recollection, right?
I do not have any recollection.
Okay, so the photo was from Halloween 2010.
Oh, that's embarrassing.
You were in a Pikachu, like, hat.
Ah, I remember making that.
I was not really into costumes then, so I just wore, like, a Raptors shirt and pretended I was, like, an athlete.
Okay.
So, yeah, it was, it was very tragic. It was, like, before, like, front screen or front-facing cameras were invented.
It was with a digital camera?
No, I think it was, like, with my cell phone, because I had a flip phone.
Okay.
But it was a very high angle, so it was really awkward.
Okay.
Yeah.
You have to send that to me.
Yeah, okay. I actually have it. I'll show you later.
Okay, perfect.
But, yeah, so that, I think, the first time we have a photo, and then the project, I guess, that you mentioned that we bonded over was over a drama presentation.
Yes.
We had to write a script or a story. And it turns out we were writing about a murder investigation.
Yes. I honestly think that is when, for me at least, because I'm really into, like, true crime and murders.
Yeah.
And so I think that moment was when I thought for the first time, hey, we have something in common. I could be friends with this girl.
Really?
I think so.
Yeah, like, I also really was obsessed with, like, CSI, Criminal Minds. So, like, our whole project was, like, we were both playing forensic investigators. Yeah. But also, I was playing a victim, and you were playing, like, a murder accomplice. So it's, like, the script, what I found was, like, a Word document. It was just, like, a little brief intro of, like, what characters we were playing. But, yeah, it was just, like, a one page. I didn't go into the whole thing. But I have no memory of it.
I just remember being in our elementary school and planning out what we were going to do and being very excited that we were able to agree on a murder-themed project.
Yeah. Like, for me, I feel like I don't have any memories because I don't have any other files. Like, I have no footage of it, no camera footage.
Oh, yeah, I don't have any of that either.
Yeah, so I'm like, did we ever film it? Did we ever finish it?
I'm sure like we did.
I don't know. I want to say we did it. But
really?
Like, yeah.
Oh, no, because I think one of our other group members was in charge of editing and everything. So back then, we didn't realize we should keep copies of everything. So.
Yeah, so that was interesting. But, yeah, and then I guess we didn't really get close until high school.
So what I remember is when we got into high school, our high school was different in the sense that not every single person or even every single grade had the same lunch period, but the two of us just so happened to have the same lunch period. And so we took advantage of that and would have lunch together. We'd make lunch plans every day. And so that's when we really started to get to know each other and truly become friends.
Yeah, I think so. I feel like those are when we actually like hung out one-on-one. Whereas like in elementary school, we didn't really talk. It was also a group setting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess high school kind of just like solidified our friendship, and then because of our other like external interests, we kind of just continued friends after.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like Andrea mentioned earlier, we just finished our undergraduate studies. And we were both in a 5-year program in our field, and so that would make us 23. So to dive a little deeper into the backstories of our education and our, I guess, professional careers going forward, Andrea, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself in that sense?
Okay, so what we do. I went to school at Ryerson University, based in Toronto. I studied architecture, and I guess this is where kind of why our podcast began, because you also study in a similar industry or similar field.
Yeah, so I studied urban planning at the University of Waterloo in Waterloo, Ontario. And to be honest, before getting into the program, I had no idea what it was. 3 years into the program, I had no idea what I was studying. But you know what? I figured I've been in it for so long, I might as well persevere and go through with it. And turns out, by the time I finished my education, I really enjoy planning. And so, trying to figure out my life out, I wanted to dive deeper into my interests specifically in the planning and architecture industry. And so Andrea and I decided to talk more,
or I guess like record our talks or like our discussions, because we've talked about this like when we go on hikes, when we have dinner, like things that we're interested or concerned about within our industry, but we had no platform or no space to talk about it.
Exactly. Yeah, so essentially, yeah, with our friendship, a lot of what we talk about, because we are in the situation where our fields are the same, we have the unique opportunity to be able to discuss these things with one another.
Yeah.
And so we figured, why not record it and have other people listen on and maybe share their thoughts too.
Yeah.
And thus the podcast
that's how the podcast was born.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I guess before we even talk about how we got into our fields, like, I guess, like, talk about, like, why you went into planning, and, like, because when you first told me back in, like, grade 12 that you're going to Waterloo for planning, I was just like, oh, this is, like, very, like, really sudden, very, like, left field, and I'm just like,
yes.
Yeah, what made you decide that?
Yeah, so let me start by saying it was very surprising for Andrea and a lot of our friends, as well as myself, when I decided to choose planning. So back in grade 12, I had applied to, I remember, 7 programs across different universities, and the program that I ended up choosing was actually the last one on my list. What I had initially intended to go into was either a nutrition-based program or an environment-based program, because I
remember you really liked food. You
did
all, like, the family studies, all the food and nutrition courses.
Yes. So that was kind of like, that was my dream program throughout my high school career, starting in grade 9. However, once grade 11 hit, I realized that I suck at science and math. And nutrition is a very science and math-based program.
Yeah.
And so that is when I realized, not only will I not do very well in this program, but I will probably hate it. And so I figured, let me dive into something else. And so that's when I decided on going into environment-based program, because I've always been a strong advocate for sustainability. And so the planning at Waterloo is under the Faculty of Environment. And I just so happened to know someone who was already in the program, who was a few years ahead. And I had the opportunity to talk to her about her experiences with it, why she went into the program, and I gave her a little backstory about who I am and why I'm asking her these questions. And she gave me a little spiel on the program, saying what it's about, what she likes about it, and the outcome of the program, such as like career goals and opportunities from coming out of the program. And I thought, hey, as someone that doesn't really like school, studying this as an undergraduate degree will allow me to only study a maximum of 5 years before being able to practice professionally. And that was a very strong pro for me.
Yeah.
And so that's why I chose the program. But honestly, at that point, that was the only reason why I went into the program.
Really?
Yeah.
Fascinating.
But I know for you, your choice of going into architecture started way back when you were younger.
Yeah, so mine was like more of a linear process where like I've always known since I was like probably 10 years old that I wanted to become an architect. And I feel like I truly discovered that passion like through Lego. Like I was hooked on Lego. I loved building Lego sets, Lego houses, Lego Ferris wheels, anything like that. But like it didn't really click in my head until I was at like my aunt's house and she has like a big box of Legos for my brother and I to play with whenever we come over. And then I like built my own house from scratch with no like building tools or building like plans of the books. Like I did that on my own. I was like, wow, I felt so accomplished. I really enjoyed it. And like the whole process of like designing my own house was really fun that I was just like, oh, I want to do this for a living. And like the field of architecture like combines a lot of things that I really like. Like I like art, but I would never see myself in like pursuing something that was like solely art. I was interested in math. Like sciences are okay. I don't love them, but it's like it's not. I don't hate it. So it's like it just architecture is like an amalgamation of like all the things I do like to study, and yeah, like that's how I decided to get into it. And then I just like continued with like arts in high school, and then also like building my own portfolio, and then went to university at Ryerson for architecture.
So you've known that you wanted to be an architect since you were 10. So you actually were able to accomplish that. You're on your way to accomplishing that. Yeah. And because of that, have your ideas of becoming a specific type of architect been fine-tuned? Have you been able to find out what direction of architecture you want to go into?
Yeah, for sure. Like before high school, I feel like the only kind of architecture I had a sense of, like, or what kind of architect I want to be was like custom residential homes.
Okay.
Yeah. Like, because then that's like, we both grew up in suburbs, so that's kind of like all we kind of knew. Like suburbs, going to like model homes in like new suburbs, especially since where we live, it's like a lot of new farmlands are becoming suburbs. So like going to see those, like that's all I knew. When I saw floor plans, it was just above like single detached homes,
exactly,
with like multi garages. So prior to university, that's kind of all I had in mind,
right?
Because that's all I really knew. But then like in high school, in university, like that kind of, they teach you a wide variety of typologies, and that kind of like steered me in a different direction. Okay. So now I'm not really boxed into custom residential. Like I would like to try that, because working like that kind of like typology, the clients you have, they have endless budget. Yes. So like you can do whatever you want pretty much, and like do very nice things. However, I don't always want to do that. Right. So I guess like another interest of mine would be like cultural, institutional typologies, and also socially conscious architecture. So things that you're building with like a specific purpose, or like to help a certain like area in society. Yeah. I think that's something that we also have in common within our fields, because with me, when I figured out the different types of planning there are, after my third year and finally realizing what I wanted to do, I realized that as a planner, I would have an opportunity to
work with marginalized groups to plan for more equitable and accessible communities. And so I think that's something we have in common, where we want to use our abilities in our fields to help better communities.
Yeah, so building with a purpose is what we want to do.
Yeah, so not just building and creating for money.
Yeah, so like that's another thing. It's like with this podcast we want to talk about not only our interests but also concerns we have.
Yes.
So another concern is like we've lived in the suburbs all our life, so we are not suburb people. We are city people, and we find that like the dichotomy between like the suburbs and the city is that the suburbs are a lot more wasteful when it comes to land and resources.
Yes.
And like the affordableness of like living out here versus living in the city. So that's one thing that we want to talk about in the future that, yeah, I think we both have in common. And another thing that kind of like ties in with like building with a purpose is that I find that like Toronto kind of shies away from its history. They like, when it comes to significant architecture to the city, they always have this habit of like tearing it down and building just things that necessarily are not for the better of society, like condos. It's like we have enough like high rises that are unaffordable for people. It's time to build affordable housing. However, like the money is not really there for it, therefore people don't do it. So it's like,
and there's always this stigma around building affordable housing, but I think one of the things that not a lot of people understand is that affordable housing doesn't necessarily have to be made for people with low incomes. There's the case of the missing middle, which we'll probably get into later on.
yeah.
And that still can be considered affordable housing. And that, I think, is something that a lot of people forget about.
Yeah, exactly. They don't realize. They always just think either you have like a detached home or a single, like a townhouse, or you have like a high rise.
Yes,
like
exactly.
Yeah.
And so both of us have this interest and like the specific interests within the field. It's really nice that we're able to share this and talk about it and hopefully share our opinions, but also bring light to a lot of issues and questions we have within the field.
Yeah, like it'd be good to know that like the things that we feel is not isolated, and that like many of you listening that could also be agreeing with us and like think the same as well.
Exactly. But also, if you do disagree, we'd like to know why, and you would be able to broaden our horizons on why we may not have the most correct opinion, although opinion
or perspective.
Exactly.
Or the
Thank you.
correct facts that we're drawing upon.
And so not only is this a podcast where we're trying to be able to share our ideas and everything, we're hoping to learn from it as well.
Yeah, so like we're planning to use this podcast as a tool for professional development.
Exactly.
Because along with graduating this year, we are currently unemployed.
And so we figured, although we're trying very hard and working very hard to find our
find a job in the industry.
Yes. All we're doing right now is waiting, which is perfectly fine given the current circumstances. But we figured, since we're both go-getters in a sense of trying to always achieve what we want, we decided, why don't we stop just waiting around and do something about it? And with that, we decided to start this podcast to at least have a platform to continue our education on this field.
Yeah. So along with that, like this podcast is also be a space where like we can practice our public speaking, because we both are also very shy people.
Yes, I don't know if you can tell, but along with this recording, we are filming our faces. And if we are able to overcome our fear of looking at ourselves, we may upload the video eventually.
Yes.
And if you do, you can see on our faces how uncomfortable we look.
You can also see that we're not looking at the camera at all.
Not at all.
We're just looking at each other because we're like, I need your support. Yeah, so like this podcast would be a perfect place for us to practice public speaking.
And I think with our personalities, I think being able to find the courage to do this will show that if we can do it, honestly, if you have an opinion that you're very passionate about, you should feel confident enough in your own passions to share it, no matter how shy you may feel.
Yeah.
That's what we're doing right now.
It's a touch of motivational speaking along with our podcast. Yeah.
We briefly touched upon what type of things we hope to share on this podcast. But Andrea, why don't we go over a more, let's say, concrete list of possible topics we might cover?
Okay, so in addition to kind of talking about things that we're interested in specifically within the architecture and planning field, potentially we can talk about current events that are happening, such as new projects that come about within Toronto, Canada, and possibly even the world.
I like that.
As well as we can talk about our own personal experiences of how we went through our university experience, what it was like, why we chose the school we went to.
Right.
As well as our brief experience working during both our co-op terms and what it was like to be a female in a predominantly male industry.
Yeah, I think those are the topics that we hope to touch upon, as well as anything else that we may come across.
Yeah, if you have any suggestions, please leave it in the comments of our Instagram page and also potentially this the podcast server.
Along with that, because we're still starting our careers, we will have a lot of questions about certain things within the industry. And so with that, there will be probably episodes where we go on about different questions we have. And hopefully if any of you have answers or can guide us to places to find the answers, feel free to do that as well. So that was the plan for now. Listen to our next episode to continue figuring it out with us.
Until then, thanks for following along to this episode. And don't forget to check out our Instagram page for what the next plan is.